Welcome, everyone, to Straight Talk for tonight's online community forum. My name is Rob Huff, and I am the Director of Communications and Advocacy for Metropolitan Development Council. Uh, Tonight's conversation is the 50th in a series of discussions hosted by MDC. Tonight, we will talk about eviction prevention and what resources are available for people in Pierce County. We continue to hold these discussions around important topics impacting our communities in Tacoma and Pierce County on the second and fourth Wednesdays of each month. So thank you for joining us. Most important, the message that we want to share throughout these series of conversations is that there is hope for our community, even though we're going through these crazy times. So to kick us off, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on being conducted on indigenous lands of the Puyallup people. We gratefully acknowledge that we rest on the traditional lands of the Puyallup people, where they make their home and speak the Lushootseed language. So, you may notice that, let's go on with the instructions for tonight's call. Throughout today's conversation, you can submit questions to be addressed by our speakers using the question and answer function in Zoom. We cannot promise that we'll be able to have time to answer every question, but we will make our best effort to get through the list in our allotted time. So let me very briefly let our second guest into the panel. So, Laurie, I just sent you that, moved you to the panel. So there you go. So our first panelist is Laurie Davenport, who is a communicator working for TacomaProBono. Hi, Laurie.
Sorry
Tacoma Pro Bono Tacoma Pro Bono is one of the organizations working to support tenants as our community continues to recover from the impacts of COVID-19. Also with us today is Valeri Almony, and tell me if I pronounced your name correctly, Valerie. Okay, good. She is the Rental Assistance Program Lead for Pierce County, and she oversees the effort to help keep people in their housing through rental assistance that's paid directly to housing providers. So thank you to both of you for joining us tonight. So to kick off our questions, as we've held these conversations over time, a traditional way to start the program has been to just ask people how they're doing today. So I know it's the end of a long day. I know we all have sat in Zoom meetings and been busy. So how's everybody doing today? Why don't we start with you, Valerie?
I am great. Thanks for having me here today. I'm excited. My kids started school yesterday, so I don't think anything could bring me down. So that was such a momentous day. But yeah, so I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. And Laurie, how about you?
Fabulous. Actually, school is exciting. We, Tacoma Pro Bono had a booth at the Salishan Back to School Fair at Lister Elementary yesterday afternoon. It was just awesome. It was just so great to see the kids, and we gave away everything we had, everything, including
Fantastic.
a ton of brochures. So it was exciting.
Well, it was back to school day here in this household too. So we had two kids starting school, one at School of the Arts in downtown and one at Stadium High School. So yeah, it's good to see things getting back to some semblance of normal. So Valerie, let's start with some good news from Pierce County. So I know you've been interviewed on a number of TV news programs over the last couple of weeks regarding the county's efforts to work with partners to get rental assistance dollars out to the community. How much rental assistance has been distributed? And do we have an idea how many households in Pierce County really need the help?
Yeah, so all great questions. So as of right now, we've spent over $40 million since March. And just to kind of lay the groundwork, what this has meant, is Pierce County didn't have a rental assistance program before 2022, or sorry, 2020. I'm already in the future. So before 2020, there was no rental assistance program. So this is from the ground up, built as we have gone, made changes as we've gone. And so of our Department of Treasury funds, we're already at 75% spent. Our goal for this week was to be at 50, so we're well ahead of the game. And then for our direct allocation from the state, we're already at 45.84% spent. And that includes 10 million new dollars we just got last week that we're already spending. So we have had lots of great conversations with the Treasury because they were very curious on how we've gotten where we are. We're serving about 800 households every single month. And there is all of our live data on our website, and I'll put that in the chat box so everybody has access to it. And that's updated every Tuesday evening. It shows all of the racial demographic information, ethnicity, genders. We also track veteran status. We track whether it's a youth and young adult household, everything we can think of, we put on there, including zip codes so that their locations, are we missing a specific area? So all of that information is available in real time on our Pierce County Housing Help website.
Fantastic. So how does where Pierce County stands compare to other counties across the state, as far as you know?
Yeah, so Snohomish is doing a great job getting money out the door. We're about even. King County, really, we both looked at it from different angles. So we jumped in, kind of like head first, didn't even look to see if there was a rock, one of those scenarios, and just started serving households. Whereas King County really built this robust, amazing system, and now they are serving households. So just different ways of looking at things. So we are, from my understanding, ahead of most of the state. We're actually ahead of most of the nation with our funding. So we were invited to a conversation, a roundtable with Treasury directly, and we were one of 8 communities that was invited to come and talk about our success. So it's very humbling, right? Like it's an honor to be that face and to represent the 9 amazing nonprofits who work so very hard to get these households served. But so far I think it's been really good. I will also say we've learned a lot from our counterparts throughout the state. We all share a lot of great resources back and forth. When they find something that works, they share it. When we find something that doesn't work, we share it. And I think that's just a really great collaboration to have. So different ways of doing things, but same successes of households are being prevented having evictions.
Great. So do you have a sense of how many households really need the help in Pierce County?
I know we have 14,600 total applications, and that's individual households, non-duplicative. So that's a lot. HUD estimated about 20,000 households total. So we're almost there. Of the 14,000, 9,000 have already been referred to providers. So they're either have already been paid or in process, getting ready to be processed. There's a lot of steps that have to happen. And so that last 5,000 need to be referred out. So as soon as our providers have more capacity, we send out referrals as soon as they're asked for, and we just get them served as fast as we can. So I think we see a slowdown every time when the eviction moratorium is stable. And then the minute the eviction moratorium is getting closer to being ended, we see a huge influx. And so I suspect we'll see a pretty large enrollment between the 20th and the 30th of September when the newest bridge also ends. So I am preparing for that mentally.
Yeah. So the way that the eviction moratorium has kind of played out over the last, throughout the pandemic, it has had kind of continual extensions from the state. And the latest that you referred to is the bridge resolution, which Laurie, you can probably jump in here and kind of offer some idea of what does the bridge resolution mean, and how does that impact tenants? Since I know in August they had something they had to have done during that month, and then other things happen in September. So can you kind of give us the lay of the land? And you're muted right now. There you go. Oh, you're still muted for some reason. There you go.
All right. There we go. Sticky fingers. It's that kind of day. So the bridge proclamation basically prevented landlords from seeking non-payment of rent evictions for rent that was owed during the moratorium until the rental assistance and the eviction resolution pilot program, which we affectionately call the ERPP, were both up and running in Pierce County. And so both of these programs had to certify that the court that they were ready to meet the massive demand that we know is coming. Rental assistance, of course, certified a while ago, but actually the ERPP, the Center for Dialogue and Resolution, just certified a few days ago. So we're there. That means that non-payment evictions can start again in Pierce County, and people are going to start getting 14-day notices to pay or vacate. So that's happening. And the other thing that the bridge provided was that rent was going to start needing to be paid in August. So, and again, that's people are protected under the bridge until September. But if they don't pay again in September, then those evictions can start again. So we're looking at the end of the bridge. But, as of right now, we're not seeing, obviously the amount of evictions we're seeing is much lower, but that's going to change rapidly.
Okay. And the bridge proclamation goes through the end of September, correct?
It does, yeah, through September 30th.
So what is your expectation of what is likely to happen in October if people haven't been able to avail themselves or of rental assistance, and or they haven't been able to have a conversation with their landlord to figure out an alternate path forward? What do you see that looking like?
We are going to see a massive number of evictions. There's really no way around it. We don't know exactly. I'll put into the chat, we have a link to it's called the Urban Displacement Project, that is a predictor on a very like block by block local level of what the risk of eviction is. So it's really interesting to look at. It's hard to come up with a good number because our rental assistance is so effective, and that's kicked in enough for us at a time when it's actually going to make an impact. So it's hard to tell. And our Center for Dispute Resolution is now certified, ready to go. So we don't know yet what the impact of that is going to be, but hopefully it will lessen it. But we're expecting the tsunami. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and if we, as the rental assistance program, hear about any 14-day pay or vacates, whether the landlord lets us know or the tenant lets us know, we rush those through, get them to a provider who cuts a check usually within a matter of 3 days. And the goal there is just to prevent that eviction. So for example, I received notice from a tenant. They sent me their 14-day pay or vacate yesterday, got them referred to a provider yesterday. They processed them. They already worked out a payment arrangement with the landlord, and the check was mailed today. So that way the landlord knows they're coming. The eviction is now off the table. All past due rents are caught up, and 3 months future have been paid to give that household a little bit of breathing room so that they can move forward. So if you're hearing about anybody with a 14-day pay or vacate or any really landlord issues, period, if they email us at hsrent@piercecountywa.gov, and I'll put that in the chat box, then we will immediately link them to a provider.
Fantastic. So
yeah. I can't tell you how awesome this is. I mean, we're all on email every day, but as soon as Valeri gets something, or as soon as I get something, or as soon as Garrett at Center for Dialogue and Resolution gets something, we're communicating. The rental assistance gets out, stops the eviction. That's the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, I think that's our strongest suit. I think that is our strongest, the relationship between the three entities, as well as our 9 amazing nonprofit providers, and really the communication and conversation and relationship built with all 6,000 landlords that have been served is just not paramount, right? Like, we are having really in-depth, honest conversations with landlords because they are the solution to the problem. They are the solution to many problems, and they are feeling ignored. And so what we do as an entity is we really hear them out. We process their concerns. We work with them because landlords want to keep people housed. It's very expensive to turn over a unit, to evict someone, to get someone new in who may or may not pay. And so they want to keep the people who are in there now. It's very, very, very rare do I hear a landlord say, it doesn't matter what you do, I want to evict them. I've heard it one time. And I'm like, okay, there's nothing we can do in that scenario, right? Like, then our goal is to pay the past due so that household can find housing somewhere else. And that's okay too. But so far, the landlords have been a great partner. And I think the relationship we have with with Laurie and with other folks over at Dispute Resolution is just something that you can't explain it in a document, right? Like, it is just a really homegrown, built relationship of trust and respect and a lot of communication.
Yeah, it's a lot of emails.
A lot of email.
Do you guys get the sense that the same sort of situations happening in Snohomish County, where they're actually able to get out a fair amount of the rental assistance? Is the resolution piece of it also coming along at a similar level? Because I know I've seen in the media the concerns in King County and other counties where they've really struggled to set up. It sounds like in many cases to set up systems that they would use to get the dollars out. And then I have yet to hear really in some of those other counties how the other leg of this, the dispute resolution piece, is coming along. So do either you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, we won't know for sure exactly how it's going to work. We're optimistic. They just certified, so, and we're not going to be seeing the amount of numbers hit until a couple of weeks. But there have been different issues in different counties. This is a really interesting relationship because legal representation is a very different thing from trying to arrive at a solution by mediation, and we all have to work together, and we're all kind of trained to do it differently. So, but we think it will produce results. We think it's going to work. We think specifically in Pierce County. I mean, we started our partnership with CDR in the middle of 2020 because we got a grant to do that, and so we started doing the marketing and the outreach and trying to put it together. So we've been working together for a long time. And I think every county kind of has its own process that it's going through. But, the Housing Justice Project, the Right to Counsel people, which is what we are, and the dispute resolution centers, we're working it out. We're actually, I think, going to come up with an MOU so that will be used all over the whole state if we can get through all the arguments. So it's a very fruitful situation. I think it's going to be good for everybody.
So if I am someone who is behind on my rent or worried about my rent for next month, and I know that the current eviction protections are going to go away in a couple of weeks, what advice, what should a person in that situation do?
They should, and this is from me and everybody in our Housing Justice Project, stay put, stay in your home, apply for rental assistance. If you get a notice, engage the dispute resolution center. And if none of that works, show up to your court hearing, because the court will have to appoint an attorney to represent you, which is new, groundbreaking stuff. But all is not lost if none of that stuff works.
Yeah. And once you apply, if you do get the 14-day, please reach out at HS Rent at Pierce County WA, and we will rush you through. We will also keep your landlord up to date on your process, which really helps to start to heal and patch that relationship because they see that you have done your portion to apply for rental assistance. There are some other programs, like Lakewood has their own program. So if you live in Lakewood, please apply for their program. It is not duplicative of our program, and we will still serve on the back end. But if there is a local program in your community, apply for all the available resources that you can.
Great. So do you have a sense, are the resources, Valerie, likely to run out?
From what we are seeing, eventually, yeah, one day, but not anytime soon. So we have many millions left to go from this year. We have already started it. We just contracted $9.9 million out from our American Rescue Plan funds. Once we hit 30%, we will receive even more funds from American Rescue Plan for another $14 million. And we just received word from the state, we're getting about $69 million from them. We also know that after September 30th, any Department of Treasury funded entity that is under 65% spent, which is most of the nation, is at risk for reallocating to an entity that is not below 65. So we are game planning a plan B on what to do if we get even more money with that. But all of the new fund sources go through 2024, which is great. And they serve up to 18 months of assistance. And so our goal is to just keep plugging away until every dollar is spent, really trying to figure out the best practices, working with landlords to really strengthen and streamline the process for both them, the utility companies, and the tenants to just get everybody served that we can. But as of right now, we have enough money in the pot to serve everyone who's in the queue.
That's great. So I know in some counties there's been conversations about landlords who have not been interested in accepting rental assistance because they kind of want to move on from the tenants that they have. Have we seen that happening as much in Pierce County?
We have one case, one, and it was a misunderstanding of what it was going to do to their taxes. So what we did was connected them with some professionals that could give proper tax advice, because that is not our strong suit. And then he signed the form. But we have not had any landlords refuse payment. We have not had any landlords refuse to be a part of the solution. And we, have just really worked hard to build that relationship with each landlord, which I think is why so many are willing to work with us. We are doing a lot of future rents, which landlords love because there's 3 months future they can access. And we're just trying to make it as easy on them as possible. So the goal is our sentence is we're going to help as many households as possible, and we're going to make as many landlords whole as we can. And so they're a part of our solution. And I think that goes a long way because they're not feeling ignored. They're not feeling like the landlords really feel like they're the evil ones in the scenario. A lot of times when you hear the conversations about landlord tenant rights, they feel like they're the ones perpetrated as being the wrong. And we have tried very hard to realize and to really push the message that they are part of the solution. And so we have some amazing landlords that we work with very closely. Laurie and I are doing a presentation next week with landlord Q&A session where they can just come vent their frustrations, which we know will happen, and really get honest answers to their specific questions. And we have 300 landlords registered. We also do emails every other week to the landlords directly about what's going on in the program, what other options are available in the community, applying for state resources and applying for the landlord limited fund and things like that I don't think a lot of other communities are doing that level of communication. And so landlords know they are in the queue, they're being served, their tenants have applied, and what's next. And so our goal is to constantly keep them updated. We also email the tenants every 2 weeks and say, hey, you're still in the queue. We're on this week that we're sending, so for example, I'm sending out May 6th right now referrals, and then you applied on this day. So that gives you kind of a timeline of when we'll get to you. Stay in your home, communicate with your landlord, reach out for assistance if you need mediation, or if there's any kind of a notice, please let us know. So I think just that level of communication really helps a lot.
Yeah, it really sounds like it. And that's definitely consistent with what we've heard. The three of us have all been in conversations that include housing providers. And that's what we have heard. We've also heard, even though statewide there always have been examples that have been brought up about tenants who just have not had an interest in answering calls or communicating at all with landlords. Have you had a sense, Laurie, if that has been remedied now to some extent? From what we heard, I know mutually from some housing providers, it was very few tenants who were actually in that situation. But do we know if some of those have come around now?
Yeah, just based on what we're seeing, it's improving because we're getting to the end. It's like Valerie said, every time you get towards the end, and this is really the end, people are finding the courage to come out and do something about the issue. I think people are just so afraid of losing their housing, of having to confront multiple issues that we don't think about. I mean, we're dealing with people who are people who may have an immigration issue, people who may have warrants or old fines, or whatever situation makes you not feel like contacting the authorities for help. There's a lot of reasons why people don't just jump to get help. But I think that right now the atmosphere is making people say, yeah, okay, I will give it a try. And we hope that continues. And we're really trying to do a lot of outreach.
That is
and then
great news.
We did postcards in July, and we saw a really good turnout from the postcards. They were very just accepting. They were available in 5 languages, and they gave information on mortgage, utility, evictions, and the moratorium. which was great. And we got a lot of positive feedback regarding that, just because not everyone's checking their email right now, right? Like you're getting emails from your landlord, you're getting emails about your utilities, like just stress. And one of the other things that we've heard a lot from is, this is the first time I've ever needed assistance. It's humiliating, it's exhausting, it's stressful. I've never been in the system. I don't know how to be in the system. So what we've tried to do is take away all that judgment, take away all that extra fear, and let us be a part of your solution. Let us walk with you. And so I think that is a difference. Like, we've picked 9 amazing nonprofit providers who are all very demographically diverse, who have very specific backgrounds, who serve a lot of populations that are more impacted by COVID-19. And so they're more impacted by all of the system bias that has been created for rent. And I think that alone has really strengthened the relationship. Landlords can also email us and say, hey, has this person applied? We'll say yes or no. If they haven't, if they give us their contact, we'll call them. We'll help them apply. We'll have 211 call them. And that way they're not trying to do it over the computer, because internet's not for everybody, right? Like, it's horrible at my house. And so we have 211, a contract with 211, who does an amazing job in 200 languages, and they will call that tenant and help them apply over the phone and do it every single day for us. And so I think that is a big game changer too, is really just that human element, right? Like, I'm in a stressful situation and I just want to vent. That's okay. Vent, call us and vent it out, and then let's apply. And that's been really, really successful.
Do you think there's been a lot more success with this in Pierce County because it's a third party kind of intervening, kind of bringing bringing the landlord and the tenant together? Because it seems like for much of the pandemic, there was kind of two sides of a conversation talking around each other, but not to each other, maybe. And do you think that's been a factor?
I think so. I think, one, like, the county's funded. Our job is to get the money out the door, right? Like, we aren't pushing landlord tenant rights. We aren't trying to pick sides. We aren't really trying to tell you what's right or wrong. We're just trying to get help, right? Like, that's our goal, is to just get you help. And if you need a mediator, I can connect you with Garrett in a matter of seconds. If you need access to TacomaProBono, you have a notice, you have an issue, I can get you connected to Laurie in a matter of seconds. But I think the really successful part is, between our 3 relationships and then all 9 of the nonprofits, there isn't any population that isn't represented that we can find. If you are physically disabled, if you have hearing impaired, if you have anything like any ailments at all, we have a system and a program of somebody who can serve you and equitably serve you to make you more comfortable and really wrap around services. So, for example, next Thursday, Laurie and I, we will be at Parkland Spanaway Library, and we're going to help people apply in person, and we're going to talk to you about TacomaProBono, and we're in person, right? And that's not something you find with COVID. So we will be there for 2 to 5 next Thursday evening, just talking to people and answering questions. And I think that is a difference with our program in Pierce County as a whole than maybe what some of the other communities are doing.
Yeah.
I also think our legal community here is a little bit different in terms of how we work with evictions and housing issues. Our attorneys at the Housing Justice Project, now soon to become Right to Counsel, we work with the attorneys who represent landlords. Of course, if you go up in court and you're defending your tenant, there's no holds barred, but we work together to try to resolve things before that happens. We get along. We talk to each other. I was just talking to a landlord attorney the other day who was telling me that he was very happy with the people that we had hired for Right to Counsel, because they work so well with their attorneys. So that's our philosophy, and that's not true in every county. We also have a great relationship with the court, and the court understands how we all kind of work in cooperation. So it's unusual. We're grateful for that.
So, Laurie, I know in previous conversations we've touched on this, but in terms of, since we're finally at the point now where the eviction protections are going to end as they have existed, what if you do get a notice that your landlord wants to evict you? There's a process that takes place, and it takes some time. So in some of the media stories that have been portrayed, and some of the advocates have portrayed around tenant advocates, there's been a talk about a straight path between eviction and homelessness, almost as if it's something that immediately happens. Can you kind of go over a little bit of the timing and process that might help reassure people a little bit if they do find themselves in that situation?
Yeah, yeah,
That they're not going
absolutely.
to be on the street tomorrow.
No, in fact, that will be very difficult to end up on the street tomorrow unless you wanted to. It's right now, if it's for a non-payment of rent, um, regardless of when it happens, whether it's now or later, the process has to go through the eviction resolution program one way or another. So the Center for Dialogue and Resolution has to certify that that process has taken place, whether the tenants agreed to a payment plan, not agreed to a payment plan, whether it's worked out, whether it's not worked out. It has to have happened if it's a non-payment case. And historically, 80% of our cases are non-payment cases, and that's probably going to go up even higher. So that's there first of all. And then secondly, if the landlord then is okay to file for eviction, that means it goes to court, and that means that right to counsel pops in, and that person, if they show up at their hearing, is entitled to have an attorney represent them. All of that takes time. If a person just shows up and hasn't contacted anybody, they're facing their hearing, we're there, we're going to ask the court, and the court already, is prepared to do this. That hearing is going to be continued. So we're talking weeks, we're talking resources that are there, that were never there in the past. I mean, people were really on their own in the past when they come to court. Our housing justice project was quite small. We could represent maybe 3 out of 15 people on a docket. It's not the case anymore. Everyone in Washington who's eligible is entitled to representation by an attorney in an eviction hearing. That's huge. And it's taken us a while to get ramped up, but we're ready to go. And we've been doing that work for quite a while. So it's happening.
That's great news.
Yeah. So it will take a while. I think the big thing to remember, you can't be evicted without a court order. Everybody needs to know that. A threat will not work. Misinformation will not work. Playing on people's fears will not work. The court order has to be there. And all these processes have to happen before that court order can be put into effect. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really powerful sentence, Laurie, because I hear so many times, like you see on the news, you see on the TV and the movies where the landlord just comes in and changes the locks and throws all your stuff in. And
yeah, well, they do that, but
right,
we're there.
Not legally.
Yeah.
So yeah, we spend a lot of time educating tenants and landlords. Sometimes landlords are not aware of their responsibilities, and so I think if you can find a positive in COVID, the relationship and the education that has come out of this program specifically and all of the amazing things, I think this is going to be something we can look back on in 20 years and really get a lot of lessons from.
Yeah, there will be a huge education effort as we get through this, because these laws that have changed this year are powerful. I mean, we haven't even mentioned just cause, which means that, in the past, under the landlord-tenant law, landlord could evict anybody anytime they wanted to if they were on a month-to-month, and that's not the case anymore. It has to be one of 16 actual reasons. You have to have a reason to evict. That's huge. It is one of the biggest factors in actually preventing evictions from happening. We haven't even delved into that yet. People don't understand it. They don't know how to use it. They don't know what it means. It's going to be big. 5160, the right to counsel, first state in the nation to put that into effect. So we just don't know what's going to happen. So that's going to be huge education for everyone.
Yeah, that's all great news. And another thing that happened last year was that the state approved funds to continue providing rental assistance beyond the immediate emergency. So hopefully that's going to be a lifeline for households as well. And
yeah, also I think it's important to note that, and this is correct, right, Valerie, that if you have left your house, if you've left your rental, at this point now you still can get rental assistance, which
Yep,
is a big change.
As long
That's a good thing for people to know.
Yeah, the Treasury changed the rule last Wednesday. And so as long as the tenant is requesting it, then, because we have to have that conversation with the tenant. If you accept these funds for your past due unit, you are not eligible for any funds in the current unit unless it's less than 12 months. But if they have vacated the unit, they're eligible. So they just need to reach out. We let landlords know because, of course, they're super excited about it. And so we started a list we just call vacant. It's the name of the Excel spreadsheet. And so we're starting a list so we can start to figure out what's the best way to process. That really helps prevent that homelessness experience, right? Because it's really hard to get housed once you have past dues, if you have an eviction, if you even have an eviction attempt, it's really hard to get housed after that. And so our goal is to just make sure tenants can get stably housed in their new units.
Yeah. And that causes me to mention, if people do have evictions on their record, we can take care of that. We can help with that. There's a process that you can go through that keeps that record off of the screening agencies that are looking for issues when you're applying for rentals. So we can do it. Contact us.
That's so cool.
Yeah, no kidding. It's just great to know that there's a lifeline out there for people. I do know that a number of people, one of the things that's happening since the eviction protections are coming to an end is people are seeing their rents go up in some situations. So I do know that it's not all puppy dogs and roses, but we have a much better situation now than we did even before we went into COVID in terms of resources to keep people in their housing.
Yeah. And to add to that, Rob, is now the Washington State Department of Commerce, if an applicant applies after September 1st, or if they've already been served and they are getting additional assistance, the landlord has to agree to not increase rents or evict for at least 6 months from the date of payment. And so while we are paying lots of past dues, we're also now asking for you to create some housing stability for those households. They can evict for other things. They cannot evict for non-payment. And so that's the goal, and that is effective as of September 1st.
Great. Yeah, that's fantastic as well. So why don't we wrap up? I wanted to end the night with a question for both of you, and then I'll share a slide just to put the information for contacting Pierce County Rental Assistance, the Center for Dialogue and Resolution, and TacomaProBono on the screen so people can see it. But the question I had is, so both of you are working in jobs that have been high pressure for the last year and a half, trying to rush dollars out the door and follow all the rules and get processes set up. So how are you handling the pressures of your work right now, and where do you find the motivation to keep going?
Great question. I actually function better off of it. I think it is ingrained in and you know me from MDC, but I function better in a fast-paced, urgent environment. And I feel like that's kind of where my job has always taken me, whether it be in homeless, rental assistance. There's a sense of urgency. And the motivation comes from that one eviction we prevented, or that one landlord who didn't lose their house because their tenant paid rent, or that one tenant who says, "Thank you, I can buy school supplies." And that's all it takes. And then I'm good for like a whole week. Then I do it all over again.
How about you, Laurie?
Yeah, the worst job I ever had was one where there wasn't enough to do. It drove me out of my mind. So I guess I'm happy having a lot of stuff going on in a lot of different places all the time. The other thing I'm happy about is, like, I think Valerie kind of touched on this. Anytime you go through a crisis, there are some silver linings. There's some good things. I keep beating the same drum over and over and over again, that the fact that legal aid for so many years, decades, has been so underfunded is something that's just had a terrible impact on just equality in our country, on the racial issues that we're facing. It's part of the systemic racism that we're trying to dismantle. The legal system is part of that, and defunding legal aid has been a part of that. And we're seeing now money coming in to legal aid in ways that it should and should always have, because we have to. We just have to. We got to. We can't have this happening. So guess what? We have to fund it. And that's exciting to me because that's like a huge change beginning. I can kind of see it starting to roll over. People are thinking, oh yeah, we really need this,
Are you
despite all the things
optimistic?
we're afraid of, you know.
Are you optimistic that that kind of funding is going to continue to be there?
That's part of what keeps me energized. I'm fighting for it. I'm gonna keep
Good.
fighting for it. Has to happen.
And
Well,
we're
I'm
making a
going to
great
put
case.
yeah, exactly. So I wanted to put on screen a couple of contact resources. So Valerie, you'll have to tell me if this rental assistance page is still correct. It's piercecountylaw.gov/7142/rental assistance. That at
I don't
least
know.
the
Yeah,
yeah,
looks right to me.
I think
Looks
it's the
right to
right
me.
one.
If you
Yeah,
Google Pierce County Housing Help, it pops. We are the first one that pops up every single time.
that's perfect. And that's easier than having to type this URL.
Right.
The other contact information here, the Center for Dialogue and Resolution, and their webpage is listed along with the phone number and Tacoma Pro Bono as well. So let me get this off the screen. And I wanted to thank both of you for joining the conversation tonight. And this information, hopefully it's of use for folks here on Zoom as well as for folks who are watching on Facebook. And the conversation will be archived and available for folks to watch later. And I just want to say I appreciate how much you guys are giving people hope right now.
Thank you for having us. It's been fun.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks.
Yeah, great. And for everybody else who's watching this on either Facebook or Zoom, thanks for tuning in, and join us in a couple of weeks. We'll be back with another topic, another discussion. So have a great evening.